One question, an amazing lineup of CEOs, founders, and experts. This is Marketing for the Now.
Super excited.
Can you hear me? You're 50th.
Thank you so much.
That made me feel
Thanks for having me. I love how both
realize if you're back.
So glad to be
You real
Marketing for Now.
Gary, we are back.
I'm so happy to be back.
Everybody's back in the office today. It feels good. I didn't realize how much I missed it.
I agree. It's been really fun.
All right, so today we're going to focus on B2B, and we're going to kick it off with the queen bee of B2B, Ty Heath, who runs the B2B Institute at LinkedIn. She ran a fabulous seminar at Cannes. And a quick fun fact about Ty that I did not know, she was a two-time Olympic trials qualifier in the 800 meters. And I was just telling her, I think that's the hardest race. You got to go a long time and really fast, which is, I think that it says a lot about our Ty. So can't wait to hear what you got to lay down, Ty.
Thank you. Big facts. Thanks for having me. The 800 meter is a full sprint, folks. It's a full sprint.
That's real stuff, Ty. That's real stuff. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here. I love this. We're focusing on B2B today. I'm passionate about it. So thanks for having me.
Of course. Let's talk about that. B2B is obviously, actually, before I do that, big shout out to Adam Meeks, Mohammed Sultan, Jim Michael on LinkedIn, Jennifer C on Facebook. We got a bunch of people in here. Davey Paul on Facebook. We talk a lot about B2C, the world does, because we know about Starbucks and Nike, that we live through it. The B2B landscape is, it's funny, I'm also very passionate. I'm very passionate about where you happen to be now, so this will be easy for me. I continue to be frustrated with B2B marketing around the world. We have a lot of B2B inquiries, a lot of B2B clients, and they're just overly comfortable on running a print ad in their industry magazine, overly comfortable spending ungodly amounts of money on trade shows that they've been going to for 20 years. They're not acquiring any new customers. They know all those people at those trade shows already know who those people are. And yet they continue to underinvest in modern marketing, whether that is making original programming on podcasts or shows. And the place that for everybody who's watching, I've been saying this loud and proud for 5 years, so I'm not trying to make Ty feel nice, though it's a nice byproduct. I am blown away how people have not figured out that media and creative on LinkedIn, the way they think about Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, and Snap and others, is the greatest opportunity for B2B companies in the world. And so when I knew we were doing this, I said to the team, I'm like, just make sure LinkedIn's there, because that's, there's so many Fortune 5000 B2B CMOs watching right now, but looking at the comments, there's a ton of service providers, one-shop lawyers, accountants, kind of that SMB B2B audience that is heavy in here, and financial advisors, and I want them to understand the opportunity in the space.
Yeah, LinkedIn is major for B2B. It is a platform where you can reach customers, employees, leaders, shareholders. It's the platform for B2B, honestly. So I'm really glad that you're doing my job, Gary, here, telling the audience about it. And in regard to what you said about the opportunity for B2B, wherever there's a challenge, wherever there's a gap, there's an opportunity. So I'm really excited about B2B marketers really grasping investment in creative, the investment in brand. I think it's really exciting. And there are a lot of these major brands that a lot of people don't know about are B2B, right? So I think there's a huge future. I think fast forward a year from now, and I'm thinking it's like a different conversation. That's my hope, Gary.
What are the biggest misconceptions and or opportunities in the way we set this up today, which is building brand and business in B2B?
Yeah, I think one of the foundational things to remember is, if you think about what our job as a marketer is, it is to build memories, right? We want people to be thinking about our brands. We want to be remembered. More often than not, the brand that's remembered is the brand that's bought. So marketers are actually in the memory business. And what B2B marketers can start thinking about a little bit more is how do you link your brand to relevant buying situations. So in our B2B Institute research, we're a think tank. We work with leading academics and practitioners to investigate how marketers can create value. We work with this wonderful organization called the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, and they have this concept called category entry points. And these are when buyers enter the market. And so we want, when buyers enter the market, that our brands are the ones that come to mind. And if your customers don't know your brand when they enter the market, then it's already too late. So I think going back to what you said about misconceptions, it's what business are we in? Memory. So that means investment in creativity. And I think the other big one is, the balance of brand to demand and how we're investing in that. The B2B Institute, we have this franchise called B2B Trends for the Contrarian Marketer. And a key trend to take a look at, folks, is one called the 95-5 rule.
95-5.
95-5 rule. And, taking it back to like the funnel, the marketing funnel, which is one of the most recognized mental models for marketing of all time. The misconception is that, there's the awareness stage, the consideration stage. We put that to the side. What we believe is that buyers are either in market or out market for your business. And so the funnel, the problem with the funnel is it leads marketers to believe that you're responsible for placing people in market.
Can I ask you something on that before I lose you here? Because I know these go so fast. There's a lot of normals in here, maybe weren't classically trained. Let me ask you a question on that. Where do you think relevance falls in, right? I think the biggest issue in marketing is people make one video, TV, and it's completely vanilla because they're trying to reach everybody. And for everyone, me and you, and for Seth Leroy and Flavio A and Karen GP and Tim G right now, it's hard for that advertising to mean something to us because it has no teeth. It has no relevance. It doesn't speak to me. It doesn't say, hey, did you grow up an immigrant selling lemonade? Then I'm like, whoa, I want to buy that car. I want it doesn't even stop us. To your point, in market, not. The issue is for coffee, for sneakers, they're always in market potentially. To your point, in B2B land, especially bigger company, you go to Fortune 500 land, it's once every 3 years, it's once every year.
Right.
But to me, the creative doesn't have enough relevance, specific truths to it, thus rendering it to a place where B2B companies are more sales organizations, not marketing organizations.
Right.
Thoughts?
Right. Well, the key is you want to be remembered in the first place. That's the first hurdle to get over. So you want to think about what we call relevant buying situations and be known. So it's being remembered, but it's also being remembered in the context of the situation. And there are levels to this, right?
Of course.
So, are people aware of your existence? Are they aware of your existence in a particular situation? You mentioned coffee. People love coffee.
Right.
But are they thinking about what brand of coffee are they thinking about when they're walking to work, when they're at home on the weekend with their family or friends? So now it's not just about relevance, it's about being relevant in a particular situation. Correct. And the holy grail is being thought of and linking your brand to as many of those buying situations as possible. But the other piece I think you're speaking to here, Gary, is this idea of, what kind of ads help us get there. So it's the creativity, the memory devices that help us be remembered at the brand level, right? So thinking about using characters, emotion, music, all these things that help implant the memory for people. But that's not a space where I think many B2B marketers are playing right now. We tend to overly focus on features. We have another trend called the product delusion, where people, talk about, here are all the things that, our product can do. Where if we're not remembered or known in the first place,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't, exactly. So that's the distinction that I want to make about relevance for people who want to start. I think it's a revolutionary concept to actually think about relevant buying situations.
agree.
That coffee example you brought up, I think, is a good one.
Or a LinkedIn post with a video that is actually interesting that says, hey, are you a CIO and struggling with this exact thing? Everything's so vanilla. It's like every B2B campaign's the same. I'm actually looking at a B2B outdoor right now and says, actually that's AirPods. I thought it was AirPods. But like, it's like every B2B campaign's the same. It's like, Ty, it's like, we're empowering your future. We're gonna make it like come on, marketers. Anyway, Ty, we've run out of time. Thank you so much. Continued success.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ty. Gary, next we're going to welcome Michael Roberts, who is the CMO of MetLife, and he's a member on its executive leadership team. He leads brand and marketing globally, and he has a very interesting fun fact as well. Michael is an opera singer. We've got quite the talent here today.
We really do. Opera singers, Olympians. I mean, it's exciting stuff.
Amazing.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Gary. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you here. I mean, especially because, I was at MetLife Stadium a couple of days ago. So I always have a lot of love for MetLife because of my New York Jets. Talk about why naming, like, this is actually very funny based on what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
No joke. I'm like, feel warm towards you because you're the naming rights of my favorite pastime. And that's an affinity relevance thing that I think I'd like to continue on the path. I'm sure you were listening. What's your take on that, Michael? Like, am I right, or am I over hyperbolizing, or do we need to get out of vanilla?
Yeah, I think we do need to get out of vanilla. I think relevance is an important concept, for B2B marketers to embrace. I also love what Ty said about the funnel. This funnel needs to be set aside.
100%.
What I've found is that the most important thing is to get consideration, and consideration happens at the moment of need. And so if you're not getting consideration at a moment of need, then you are irrelevant. Or if you're talking to people when they don't have a need, then you're also irrelevant. And so, this is why, I think that from what I've seen in the analytics that I've done is that consideration has the highest predictive value for sales in the B2B space. Like that's what people are looking for.
Michael, to educate some of the kids coming up the game, or some of the people that haven't been thinking about this, what is your guess? And I know this is a guess, we'd all be guessing, but play this game out between B2B marketing versus being sales organizations.
Yeah.
Because, even in CPG land, where Pepsi, Procter & Gamble, the sales team's always got a little cynical view of the marketers. They think they're just putzing around, wasting money. In B2B land, it's even more profound because, these are big contracts. There's a lot that goes into it. What's your gut tell you that let's say the B2B Fortune 500, the top 500 B2B companies in the world, what's your personal guess on how much DNA they have in sales versus how much they actually have in marketing? Are they 80-20 sales organizations out there? Are they 50-50? What's your take?
Yeah, so I'd add another category to it, Gary, especially in the B2B world. I'd say there are engineering focused firms as well, right? And so so you have this balance.
The SaaS business, the SAP in my building here, that is an German engineered DNA business.
Right. And you could take it out of just technology and call it product, right? So you've got sales, product, and marketing. And I think, depending on the industry, you're going to get overweight in one of them. And most companies are either overweight in product or in sales. And marketing kind of follows along. It follows product, or it follows sales, or it tries to cut its own path and is generally not successful. And so that's what I think has created, let's just do the same thing that the salespeople or the product people are happy with over and over again, and not create any noise. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see this vanilla. But the opportunity.
Michael, I apologize real quick. Varun Tadparty said in LinkedIn, watching live, Gary will never see my comment. I just wanted to prove to him that I would. Continue, my friend. Continue.
I love it, Gary.
But this goes back to relevance, right? Right now in the meta, we're doing awareness, but taking the microsecond to say hello to Amir Lamb or Jacob Rick or Chris O or Ryan Miller, things happen from that. And I think there's a huge opportunity within that.
There is. I think the opportunity, though, back to your question, Gary, is for sales, marketing, product to create a go-to-market ecosystem. And it's not about any of them. It's about the commercial outcome, and it's about how the team works together on the commercial outcome. I think too often the marketers are trying to prove marketing works, right? Versus
100%. And you know this as a CMO of such a big company. A lot of these, I always tell people, like real life, like real talk on this show, measuring brand is like measuring the value of God or love. Like I'm aware that I'm sure your company and every client we have has a mechanism, whether it's an internal MMA, Nielsen, brand lift studies, interbrand rankings. And I sit and watch all these trillions of dollars wasted to justify and common sense not having a seat at the table.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key is like, yes, there's a whole bunch of these measures which are important for strategy or for optimization, but those aren't the measures of what marketing is delivering from a value perspective. These are the commercial outcomes that the business needs to see and marketing needs to take accountability for their participation in the ecosystem that creates those commercial outcomes. And that means that it's not about marketing, it's about the commercial outcomes and how marketing can enable it with things that drive those commercial outcomes more and more directly. This is why, back to your point on relevance, like, consideration being highly, I would say highly predictive based on the predictive models I've seen, is highly predictive of sales because it means that you're relevant.
It's just so obvious. It's like, and I always try to break this down to normal conversations for humans. Like if you're attracted to another human being on first sight, there's a higher percentage chance that you may have a relationship with that person because you're considering, I would like to date that person. Like, it's just the way it works. And it's really fascinating. Talk to me about something that I'm really passionate about in building brand. Do you believe the biggest brands in the world, or even smallest, do you feel like they continue to underestimate the power of creative and content in social, because we've all been trained in television and outdoor? Because it's so hard to watch people speak about social networks as like demise to democracy.
Right.
And the biggest challenge in parenting, because everyone's consuming it. But then when we check into MetLife or Chase or Pepsi, we forget that those channels are actually dominating our society. What do you think is, and from your own personal view at MetLife, maybe, do you feel like we're starting to rev up on the way I started this show, which is like making a ton of content for LinkedIn every day and having it targeted and make the content relevant to that target might be a better use of our money? Do you feel like that's starting to finally be accepted or be thought about, or at least debated a little bit?
I think we're really, really early. I mean, I think it's really, really early. I think we should be doing it. These platforms are dominating attention. And they're dominating attention with algorithms that enable people to find what's relevant to them. So back to this relevance comment. And so where's the best way to find relevance? It's in the place where you continue to find it, which is going to be some of these social media platforms. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to actually start to really understand we all talk about, just as you said, the social impact of these platforms, but there's a business impact to these platforms, which I think has been muted in some way. And we need to figure out a way to have that conversation, even while we're still having the social impact conversation for these platforms.
Michael, well said. I'm wishing you well. Thank you.
All right. Take care, Gary.
Thank you, Michael. So Gary, we're bringing Jim Stengel back up for another conversation. Jim Stengel is the president and CEO of the Jim Stengel Company, formerly the global CMO of Procter & Gamble, but he's also the host of the CMO podcast, a senior fellow at Northwestern Kellogg, a speaker with the Washington Speakers Bureau, and an advisor to many companies. Thanks for joining us. We know it's a busy day, Jim. We really appreciate it.
Andrea, so good to see you. Love the earrings.
Thank you.
Hi, Gary.
Hey, brother. How are you?
I do. So good to be with you. I'm in Dallas today, Gary. I'm in Dallas after the rain.
I'm glad. I know a lot of people got caught. Simon Loudon, somebody you probably know, got caught in Dallas yesterday, texted me, missed a meeting. So I know there was a lot going there. For everybody who's watching, Jim is, this is just, I'm going to give him roses because I think we need to be giving each other more roses while we're alive in society, is truly one of the iconic CMOs of all time in advertising. He was the CMO at Procter & Gamble, which is obviously one of the biggest consumer goods companies. But why I think he's remarkable is behind the scenes, he's also one of the great human beings of all time. Just a gentleman, a kind soul, courteous, like I promise you, everything you want your son and daughter to grow up to be as a human being, that is Jim Stengel, and I just wanted to say that.
Oh, Gary, thank you. Thank you,
I mean
Gary.
it. I mean it. As we've gotten to know each other more and more and more, every time I'm left with more admiration. And you're just a wonderful person. The way you make, I'm very proud of the way I make people feel, both through scaled content, but more importantly, the people that are close to me that actually know every truth. I find that every person I meet that knows you the best loves you the most, and the people that barely know you love you, and that is the great indication of a man. And so I wanted you to know that.
Gary, I love working with you, your team. The podcast has been a great joy in my life. So thank you for that. You made me do it a few years ago. I am so happy. You were relentless.
So let's go for a few minutes on this. You've been listening, I assume, unless you were busy before you jumped on. What do we need to do to get these B2B companies to get more contemporary? Like stop mailing in a TV campaign, stop mailing in an outdoor campaign, stop mailing in a mail or print campaign, stop mailing in spending $8 million on a trade show, but doing nothing in the new contemporary lanes. What are you seeing out there, Jim?
Gary, I was at Cannes this year, at Cannes Lions, a big marketing festival. It was back in force, as you know, we were there together. And we held for the first time ever a B2B summit, and LinkedIn sponsored it. So we had all the players there: Adobe, Salesforce, Intuit, GE, Microsoft, McKinsey, Tata, you name it. And the issue, Gary, is actually very simple. And this was the first year at Cannes where there was a B2B creative lion. So they were giving awards for B2B marketing. And the top one went to Sherwin-Williams for a wonderful idea about color. But the issue is the ambition, the standards, the expectations. So why isn't B2B as creative and contemporary and relevant as the best consumer brands? What is the reason? There is not a good one.
Can we throw one fun one? I'm empathetic to the following statement. That for a lot of people, consumer brands are more shiny, right? If you're a very creative person, the idea of being the CMO for Starbucks or Peloton or Equinox or Reebok, because so many more people will see it, just might be more compelling than doing it for IBM and HP and all these great companies, but that it's going to be insular. You're not going to be doing the sizzle stuff per se, and that makes some of the talent skew that way. That might have more fire. On the flip side, to your point, so many of the CMOs that Andrea has become close with, play in B2B and have become some of my most favorite people, and I find them equally as creative. I almost think subconsciously they don't think they can go there, and I think that's a boogeyman. That's not true.
That's the paradigm we were breaking at this session. But Ryan Roslansky, the CEO at LinkedIn, made an amazing presentation at Cannes this year, and he came to visit the forum. He basically said, most of the economic value in this world to be created in the next few decades is B2B. So why the hell aren't creative people flocking to the B2B brand? Because the issue is consumer brands have become very good at telling a story, right? When you think about Apple, you think about Disney, you think about Tide, the story because they have been consistent, they've been creative. B2B brands, many of them do not tell a story. There's not a clear promise. There's lots of features and functions, but not a promise. So Ryan's call to the industry is the best creative talent needs to come into B2B. And the clients need to set really high expectations to tell a clear story, a compelling story, and treat their customers like human beings and not some sort of platform.
Robot.
People,
Do you think the combo we've been having about these companies ultimately are just too sales DNA oriented? Also, I mean, all these poor CMOs, you've been in this game way longer and have more relationships, but I have a ton now in B2B CMOs. And from week 3, they start already getting internal feedback where the sales team is shitting on marketing, and they're on their back foot before they've started. I think the CEOs of the B2B companies in the world need to really step up and understand this truth and put their CMOs in a position to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely, Gary. And I know the conversation you were having with Michael just before, we need more innovation and attribution, right?
Yeah.
We cannot measure as specifically as we need to brand marketing and the impact on performance. We're all about performance marketing because we can measure it. Brand marketing is suffering. The spending is moving to performance because we can't measure it. We need innovation there. And I've invested in a software platform to do that. Brand marketing drives results. We need to show that, and we need more innovation.
I promise you that I did not buy this because somebody cookied me on a website and they retargeted me.
That's right.
Right? And not only this, if for people that know this, it's all brand. There is nothing else. Somebody just said, Gary, why do you keep grabbing the toys off your shelf? Because I'm trying to build the VFriends IP, and even the impression of Major Moth right now becomes a brand story. I'm not cookieing Gwen Wilcox or Fiona Sparks and retargeting them a pre-roll to buy a VFriend. I'm building story.
Yeah, absolutely. I just interviewed here in Dallas, Catherine Reeves, who's the CMO of Illumina, which is a B2B genomics company, B2B. They serve a lot of healthcare platforms, laboratories. You know, she said, you know, let's not treat our customers like a robot. You know, let's go to where they are. Let's tell our story. Let's bring them into our fold. Let's have them join a coalition where we're trying to make people's lives better. That's the way to think about B2B, and they're doing phenomenally well.
I love that. Jim, I'll just give you the floor for the last 2 minutes I have. Anything that we didn't touch on in the first 2 guests or now together that might be something worth for the SMB B2B people here as a tactical thing, or maybe just as genre, even for Fortune 50, you can go the other direction that we maybe didn't touch on.
I just think the same skills we think about in consumer brands: empathy, listening, creativity. Dial up the empathy. You know, when we had this forum at Cannes, it was all about how can we be more empathetic? How can we listen more? How can we treat our customers like human beings? How can we make a difference in their lives? So again, Gary, these are principles in marketing forever, but we don't exercise them consistently.
Jim, do you believe that creative is too expensive, thus rendering brands not having enough at bats to win on relevance?
I don't think that's an excuse, no.
Do you think that's a reality, right? Because I think the thing I'm spending a lot of time on trying to get people to be able to, when you talk about empathy, to be empathetic to millions of people requires relevance to millions of people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
To do relevance, you need to do creative that actually speaks to the empathy I have for you. I'll give you the example. I have equal empathy for the following 2 people. Someone that is born into a family with so little that they grow up the way I did, immigrating. There's a lot of I equally have empathy for someone who's born into an extremely wealthy family, thus rendering anything they accomplish null and void, because everyone will tell you you were born on third base. Those are 2 very different human stories. And if I'm a brand, B2B or B2C, that's trying to capture that conversation with that individual, I need 2 very different stories. The distribution model of television makes so much sense. It was what was our profound mechanism. But I believe that the creative ad industry is still built as if that's the reality, when all these platforms now give us the actual opportunity to win on relevance, but nobody's producing 100 pieces of creative that are meaningful and quality against this opportunity per month, let alone per decade, because creative in ad land in the model that was built for television properly is too expensive to take advantage of. Thoughts?
No, I do think that's a paradigm, but I think what has to happen is the best creative companies in the world, and you're the head of one of them, need to be having discussions with these B2B companies, the ones that are going to create the most value in the world over the next 20 or 30 years. By the way, the next top 10 IPOs are all B2B.
Yep.
You know, we need to be having a discussion. They need creativity in their companies. Many of them are
100%.
lacking that. So if I'm Gary and a big
100%.
B2B company that is going to get 10 times the size comes to you and says, here are our challenges. You have a lot of problem solvers in your company. Let's come together. Let's find a way to share the value,
100%.
and let's do great work. That
Love you,
conversation
brother.
needs to be happening. That was our takeaway.
Love you, my friend.
Okay, Gary.
Talk soon.
Love you too, buddy.
Cheers.
See ya.
Thank you, Jim. And
Bye,
thank you,
Andrew.
Gary. We're going to welcome Miss Kaylin McNamara. It's about time, Kaylin.
Hello, I made
You're
it.
Miss B2B. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
I'm excited.
Kaylin is the SVP of New Business, in addition to running Vayner's consulting practice, which is growing. And we have a number of different B2B offerings, in fact. But we're here to talk with Jesse today. Very excited to have Jesse Purewal join us, who is the global head of brand at Qualtrics. Jesse is also the host of Breakthrough Builders podcast, a Qualtrics sponsored show that celebrates people whose passions have impacted the world. I'm so excited to hear this story.
Hi, Jesse. Good to see you.
Kaylin, great to be with you. Happy Wednesday. Happy middle of the week.
You too. I'm really excited for this. I really appreciate you taking the time. Why don't we start? Just give everyone a little bit of context on your background and what you're up to at Qualtrics.
Yeah, so my background is I am a career brand builder. I started off over a dozen years at Profit, which is a growth strategy consultancy focused on brand and focused on marketing. And one of my clients, I focused a lot on B2B, and I will say, sexy is in the eye of the beholder, I find, because once you get me into the software company or platform as a service or IoT or AI, like that's my magic, that's my mojo. One of my clients over the course of that journey was Qualtrics, and when I got a chance to join and be part of the marketing team and lead up brand, I just jumped on it, and man, it's been an incredible journey, and we're so happy to be kind of in the glide path and in the tailwind of so many of these kinds of discussions that have just been happening over the past few minutes. We think hard about relevance, hard about empathy, hard about connecting with people where they are and as human beings. So couldn't be more excited.
I love it. What I find so interesting about your business is while you're a B2B company, you're experts in the consumer experience, right? And so I'm curious, one, maybe give a little bit more context on Qualtrics as a brand for those who might not be as familiar. And how do you see sort of that real understanding of consumer and customer experience impact sort of your marketing and brand strategy? And obviously, I'm sure in many ways it gives you a leg up, but I can also imagine the stakes are high in terms of the experience that you look to deliver to your customers as a brand.
Yeah, well, look, it's a flattering statement, so thank you for saying that we do kind of grok the consumer side. We're learning, right? We're learning just like everybody else in B2B. Qualtrics is a company that got its start 20 years ago. I mean, many of you probably know Qualtrics because you filled out a survey on Delta Airlines or Hilton Hotels or someplace about how was your experience and how was your service. And the company for many years was all about this kind of structured, solicited data ingest to get data to go improve employee and customer experiences. Now, improving and designing customer experiences is what we're still all about. We created a category called experience management to do just that. But the really exciting thing about our technology and the evolution of our innovation agenda is that it's more pointed at unstructured data and unsolicited data. So, the Yelps of the world, the review sites, the TripAdvisors, social, being able to have a clear picture of like, what does an employee think, not just in terms of their quarterly pulse, but things that are saying on Glassdoor or Blind or others. And then what do customers think, not just about filling out surveys, when they get them in their email, but what are they saying on review sites everywhere? So that people who are marketers, people who are CX practitioners, people who are in the office of the CHRO can say like, oh, this is where we're doing well, and this is where we have to go close those experience gaps. That's what our software allows. And that's empathy at scale. Like when you are getting opinions and feeling and sentiment, that's empathy at scale. And so it's just a beautiful brand to get to steward in the sense that it's technology, it's innovation, it's kind of platform, but it's also really about improving the human experience. And so we have an opportunity and we have an obligation to create content that is a great experience in and of itself because of the business we're in, because of the category that we're in.
I love it. It's a great segue to my next one, which is I think what we saw on our end across the B2B industry in particular was a massive shift as sort of, travel was halted, trade shows halted, all of the typical kind of sales and marketing activity completely, brought to a stop. A lot of brands did use it as a time to really rethink in this modern world, how should we invest in content? What should that look like? And how do we use this as sort of a moment of reflection to maybe think differently about building brand? And so I would love for you to talk a little bit about XM Plus, because I think it's a great example of, I think, what we at Vayner are really sort of preaching, which is what Gary even just was riffing on earlier in terms of trying to provide actual value and create connection first. But all at the same time, understanding that at the end of the day, it's about driving business. So would love for you to talk a bit more about the pivot of your content strategy and that platform specifically.
Yeah, you bet. And you nailed it, right? Because it is all about connecting. And I want to bring it back to some of the stuff that Ty talked about and that Gary talked about with Jim, being human, empathy and creativity and relevance. And Ty talked about, the 95-5 rule, some constitute it as the 90-10 rule, but whatever you think of those integers, look, in B2B at any given moment, 90% of the folks who are in our total addressable market, our TAM, our category, are not actively in a purchase cycle. And so that means that 90% of our potential customers at any given time are not indicating intent. They're not going to respond to a demand gen campaign. They're not going to download that ebook. They're not going to go look for that white paper. They're going to scroll past instead of having their thumb stopped. And so what we have to do is meet people and be pervasively and persistently relevant in the stories that we tell, the content that we offer, and be courageous about ungating it and allowing them to access it without having to give the exchange of the email address. People talk about free. Nothing's free once you sign your email address out. We firmly believe we've got to create content that resonates deeply and that's pervasively available and relevant. At the same time, as you said, sort of, coming out of the pandemic and looking at what's next, we looked at what the Disney Pluses of the world were doing, what the HBO Maxes of the world are doing. It's like, holy smokes. Like, in a world of hybrid work, people aren't going to tolerate a bad content experience in their work lives and have a delightful one in their home lives as consumers, as family members. Like, who's going to step in and fill the vacuum of creating B2B content at scale that's both relevant and also deeply inspiring? And as a company that's all about improving the human experience, we're like, we want to be that company. Yeah. And so we said, look, we are going to go out there with the XM Plus platform called XM Plus, XM for Experience Management. Stories about how to run your business as an experience. Stories about how brands win on experience. Stories about how employers are winning by crafting engagement strategies that are employee first, not company first. And just the creativity and the storytelling and the relevance to a broad audience that we're building there, we feel really confident based on the early signal we're seeing, as well as our intuitions and where we know this needs to go, that this is a great way to invite people to understand more about what we're doing at Qualtrics.
Yeah. Spot on. And for anyone who gets a chance to check out the content, I think what's amazing is it doesn't take the form of branded content or ads. It's documentaries, it's storytelling that you would consume, on a Saturday night, on Netflix in terms of format. And so preaching to the choir there. I think last question, because we've got 1 minute left, is Andrea mentioned in your intro, sort of you're the host of the Breakthrough Builders podcast. For anyone who hasn't heard it, check it out. Amazing guests, great content. Where do you, we get a lot of clients that are interested in podcasting and trying to where does that fit into their sort of content strategy? How do you see the role of the podcast in terms of fueling the brand story? And then obviously for you as a personal brand, what have you sort of learned or seen through that experience?
Yeah. Folks don't want to hear Qualtrics talking about Qualtrics. Folks want to hear customers, people in our community, leaders who have created great experiences and put them in the world, talk about those experiences. And what we do in the podcast is we basically shine a light on people that we believe have created great experiences and put them in the world, and have them talk about their personal journeys. How did they get to where they are in their career? What choices did they make? What tensions did they have to resolve? And as professionals, how do they think about running their businesses as experiences? I think about, people that we've had on the show, our Catherine Chin, who runs the CX program at Twilio, Robert Chatwani, who's the chief marketing officer at Atlassian. We've had, even Dan Pink, the author of 7 different books, talk about how he writes, for an experience that his readers will have. We've had, David Meltzer, right, in the family, reflect on his journey. Just so many people. Matt Kalish, who runs DraftKings, Rebecca Minkoff, these people who've put these iconic products and brands and experiences into the world. Say, like, how did you do it? What was your fuel? And when people listen to that and understand, like, oh, these are how people that are respected leaders out in the world build experiences, they just begin to associate Qualtrics as a brand more and more with experience. And it's not the hard sell, here's our product. Some of those people aren't even necessarily Qualtrics customers, and we don't care. We just want to celebrate great experiences because that's what we're all about.
Yeah, awesome, great. And again, things people actually want to consume, which I think has been the punchline of the chat. Awesome. Well, Jesse, thank you so much for the time.
Really, you bet. Thanks for having me, team.
That was great. Thanks, Jesse. All right, Kaylin, we've got another one, a great one coming up. We're going to bring on Siddharth Taparia, who is the Global Chief Marketing Officer at JLL. We've known Siddharth for a little while, right? So back when your long tenure at SAP, you came from tech roots and have now transferred to yet another industry. It's fascinating, your background. You're an accomplished author and advisor on data privacy, cloud computing, and value-driven marketing. And interestingly, I love that you grew up in India where you studied engineering and got a degree in information technology. Welcome, Siddharth.
Indra, it's great to see you.
Hi there.
Hi, Kellen. How are you?
I appreciate this. Love your background. Excited to sort of chat a little bit. Why don't we start and just give everyone a little bit of context on you, as well as about JLL, the brand.
Yeah, I mean, I joined JLL last year as the Global Chief Marketing Officer, and JLL really didn't have a global CMO role before I joined, which was very exciting because JLL is a Fortune 200 company with 19.5 billion in revenue. We do business in 80 countries. We have over 100,000 employees, so very large global footprint. And we're all about real estate and real estate services. So that's what we do for our clients. And our clients belong to all industries. I know we've been talking about B2B, B2C. We work with our clients on every aspect of their real estate footprint. And what really excited me was the opportunity to come and be part of something really that was at the very beginning stages of the brand being built out, the company sort of starting to find its footprint in the market from a brand perspective, but also just build out the entire operating model of marketing because the company really didn't do marketing at scale in the past. It was very localized, which commercial real estate tends to be a very local business, but now it is an opportunity to do things at scale and really elevate the brand.
Love it. Obviously every industry was disrupted the past 2 years in one way or another, but this, I think, more than most, right? Complete, pivot, right? In terms of how you think about not just sort of the category, but also consumer behavior and sort of the future of workplace. Would love, as somebody who lives down the Jersey Shore, I am excited, sad that summer's over, but I'm excited to get back into the office and sort of get back into the rhythm. And I think everybody has their own sort of journey around that. What are you seeing sort of being on the front lines as we think about sort of return to work, return to office, as well as sort of the future of sort of workplace environment?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting time because, more and more companies are trying to come out with mandates and sometimes employees are pushing back, petitioning their employer and saying, we don't want to be back in the office. People did rearrange their lives around working from home. You're working from home. I'm today working from home, certainly because it's more convenient for a variety of different personal and professional reasons. But we just did a survey, which is called the Future of Work Survey. People can go read it online. It just came out, and it's interestingly 72% of people, of respondents, and this is a survey we did across 13 countries, basically said in the long term, the office will remain critical to the organization's ecosystem. So they still believe the office is critical, but at the same time, and here's the contradiction, 77% of our respondents also either agree or strongly agree that offering remote or hybrid working options is critical to attracting and retaining talent. And so it's this dichotomy that we're seeing in the market. which is people want to be back in the office to be able to meet other people, to be able to collaborate, see their customers, see their colleagues. But at the same time, they don't want to be back in the office Monday through Friday and log in at 8 in the morning and go back home at 5 in the evening.
Absolutely. And I think as a lot of the themes we've had today is it's understanding the context and those nuances. We talked about it sort of in the media landscape, just how forever fragmented attention is going to be. I think similarly in your category, the understanding of those nuances is important, obviously in sort of your sales and marketing strategy, but also just the understanding of culture and how it's forever going to be that sort of yes and mindset in the future. Having celebrated a career both B2B and B2C, we obviously as a company service B2B and B2C. And one trend we see is every B2B company wanting to be more B2C in DNA, and now B2C companies really getting focused on sort of more of the sales performance, side of things. What is your perspective on sort of the similarities between B2B and B2C, and then obviously sort of the nuances where you think there needs to be a more distinct point of view for B2B companies?
Yeah, I found the discussion that Gary was having with Jim Stengel very interesting. And also I don't agree with some parts of it, because I think there are things that are very universal. So if you have a strong brand, it applies no matter what. If people know you, if they understand who you are as a company, what you care about, what your values are, they're going to be attracted by you. If I have two companies that are exactly the same, one that I've never heard of and one that I have seen before, there's just a good likelihood of me selecting the one that I've seen before. So at the simplest level, having a strong brand matters and matters deeply. I think where the differences start to emerge is people don't realize this, and people who haven't worked in B2B oftentimes don't realize this. I've worked 15 years at SAP, and I'm at another B2B company, JLL. Sales cycles in B2B tend to be extremely long. This is not about seeing an ad, clicking buy and buying something in the next 5 minutes, and you can do attribution. When you're talking about sometimes 6-month, year-long, 18-month-long sales cycles, the attribution to marketing becomes extremely challenging. And if somebody has cracked the code on it, I would love to hear more about it. But you are making investments, but you're making investments in marketing, particularly in brand, but also in doing growth marketing, demand generation based on belief. And you're looking for measurement, and you're able to do measurement for things that you can measure. But for large parts of your investment that you're not able to measure, you're really investing based on a thesis that brand matters. And it does matter, but there is no credible way of proving it, how much it matters and how much you should invest in it. And that, I think, is the biggest challenge and the biggest difference also between B2B and B2C. The way business gets done is very different. Brand is still important for both of them, but how much companies invest in it and how much companies invest generally in marketing as a percentage of revenue, I think varies greatly between B2B and B2C because of how consumers buy ultimately and what drives those decisions. I can look at a YouTube video and I can make a decision in my personal life in the next 30 minutes or in the next day. I certainly am not going to make that decision at work when I might be investing hundreds of millions of dollars on my company's behalf. Those decisions tend to be complex. They tend to have many decision makers, and you need to cover a much broader spectrum of those decision makers and create positive impressions and create intent with them. And as Jesse was saying, at the right time, you might have 4 years, 3 years, 2 years in between, then there is no purchase intent that exists. There is no decision that has to be made.
Totally. I think everything you just unpacked could literally be its own episode alone. So I'll go to one last question for you. We obviously had Ty from LinkedIn on earlier. I see, you're active on LinkedIn, using it as a platform for you as a brand. Where do you see sort of the role of sort of executive presences on social playing a role, again, connecting with customers in the spirit of your long lead cycles, the importance of relationship, and how during COVID, we found ways digitally to scale that. How do you think about, either LinkedIn specifically or, your brand or executive brands across the organization playing a role in your future strategy?
Yeah, I'm a big believer. People don't like to hear from corporations. They like to hear from other people. And when you have executives who can communicate well and who can have a personality when they are on LinkedIn, that conversation is a lot more natural and a lot more human than a company that is a corporate feed trying to push out, no matter how interesting those tweets are. Once in a while, they'll have a viral moment, they'll have a breakthrough moment, which is great. But most of the times, the most attention that we pay to are what other people have to say. And if you look at every successful company that's out there, you will see that they're led by executives or a group of executives that are able to leverage the power of platforms like LinkedIn much better, because they have a presence that's not just talking about the company and what they do, but it's talking about what they're experiencing in their personal lives, what they're seeing in the professional lives, and combine the message, which is much more credible and much more human than a company just putting it out from its handle.
Couldn't agree more. Totally agree. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Siddharth. And thank you, Kaylin.
Thank you.
Great to have you. All right, let's welcome Peter Chun to the stage. Hey, Peter.
Andrea.
Oh, look at you.
Big shoes to fill. Kaylin, I've really enjoyed everything thus far. Such a good
It's been a good one. It's been a good one. I love that you've got, I think I see some empathy bottles behind you.
The B in the B2B stands for bottles.
Okay. There we go. B2B, B to bottles. Okay, let's go. So Peter is VaynerMedia's global head of partnerships, and we're very excited to have his first guest up, Miss Jennifer Chase, who is the global CMO and EVP at SAS. How are you, Jennifer?
Hey, Andrea. Hey, Peter. Nice to see you.
Hey, Jen.
Oh my goodness. We are so excited about this conversation. We did want to share that in addition to running a data-driven marketing strategy that helps in building, I love these, the global brand awareness, demand gen, and customer experience for SAS, I have a feeling you're also packing your son up to go to college tomorrow, we heard. A little fun fact.
Yeah, that's right. Off to Boston University tomorrow. So I'm going to need some of those bottles in Peter's background.
Send the address. We're sending them all over, but only if you're 21.
Very fired up, you guys. Take it away.
Awesome.
Thanks, Andrea. Hi, Jen. How are you? Great to see you in this environment.
Wow, it's good to be here. What a great episode so far.
Oh, so good. So good. Yeah, I think there's a couple of themes that we've had thus far that we want to definitely introduce into this conversation. But before we get into it, for those that don't know, SAS is a 50-year business. Can you just do a quick primer for the audience?
Yeah.
Just because there's so much coming down the pipe for you folks, and I think it'll just help set context for the combo.
Sure, and we're SaaS. So when you think of SaaS, it's think sassy. So your intro reminds me how much work I still have left to do in brand awareness. But yes, we're SaaS. We're a 45-year-old company. We we invented the category of analytics, and so we think of ourselves as the founder and future of analytics. The future of analytics is in AI. So that's who we are. We're very much known for we pioneered a lot of workplace culture. That you see very standard in today's marketplace, but yeah, analytics and AI. When you think SaaS software, think analytics, AI.
And as I've gotten to know you over previous events, one of the things that really stood out to me is you've been there for over 2 decades, and one of the things I've always admired about you is how fresh and current and innovative your thinking is. How do you stay fresh in an environment where you've been for as long as you have, in a company that's been as legacy oriented as it is?
Yeah, and it dates me, but I've been here over 2 decades. What that's offered me is a chance to really see the business from a lot of different angles. I've had 4 or 5 different careers while I've been here. I've seen how we make software. I've seen how we deliver software. I see how we market software. So I've got a better understanding of our business, our value chain, and I understand our customers and how they've evolved over the 45 years. How do I stay current? Sessions like this, it's I'm constantly inspired. Our space in technology and what we do is evolving so fast. So if you're not staying up to speed on the technology and technology space, you're going to get left behind. And so I've always made it a point to stay very externally focused so that I can drive the internal initiatives that I need to.
And look, some of the really exciting stuff that you folks have coming up as a business is, for those that may not know, you are kind of setting the groundwork for an IPO shortly. No timeline to be communicated other than it's in the works. And if a 50-year business is looking to move an IPO in its current state, you're looking at, and SaaS arguably has been too humble to a fault. And when you think of most of the business decision makers and B2B buyers today being millennials, how do you think about building brand as you think about SaaS tomorrow? right? And you think about retail, institutional investors, but more importantly, the customer base is likely going to evolve as well. So how do you think about that challenge?
Yeah, and I'll harken back to what Jim said earlier. The economic drivers of the future are going to be B2B business. And he talked about Ryan Roslansky's presentation and the top IPOs in the future, the biggest IPOs in the future being B2B. We've set a high ambition for ourselves internally. We want that to be us. Yeah. And so that means we have to look at how we market differently. Now, there's some things that stay the same. In my tenure since I've taken over as CMO, I've definitely made a case for the importance of brand building. And that was definitely something that was probably perceived more as arts and crafts in the past, right? I think in B2B, we've thought of it as a little bit more frivolous. And I've made the case for that. And I've really tried to and worked with my team to demonstrate the value. I love Jim's comment on brand marketing drives results. Yeah. So brand awareness, that's an enduring strategy that needs to evolve, though. We've got demand gen efforts that really keep our eye on that in-year revenue. As a company, we were practicing ESG before ESG became something that was sexy and required even in some cases. So we've got a lot of foundation to build from, but we have to do some things differently. It's really important that we clarify our promise to the market in a way that is relevant to our audience, in a way that's really useful. And I think we've got some improvement to do there, if I'm honest with myself and the work that we've done. We do have new audiences. To your point, we haven't catered to an investor audience. And so we have to introduce ourselves to that audience, and that'll be part of the future for me. And then internally, the IPO is inspiring us to act with more agility, with more operational rigor internally. And I'm using this as an opportunity to boost our creativity as well.
Well, with the changes that need to be made, you in the driver's seat here, one of the things I've also always appreciated are some of your hot takes. So let's get into it. There's a lot happening, pre-pandemic, during, post, B2B, becoming more human than ever before, dealing with a lot of incumbency, a lot of dollars, big budgets. Give us one or two hot takes.
Yeah.
Let's take it from there. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I'm fresh off Con2, my first ever time attending that event. And what a spectacle. Oh my gosh, that was just a load of inspiration. I was so excited to see how B2B was celebrated at this event. And I recognize it wasn't like that in the past. I mean, there definitely is this vibe that there's a B2B renaissance going on right now. And so, hats off to you, to LinkedIn, to Jim Stengel, everybody who's making that important right now. I think I came back and shared with my peers and with my marketing team that the bar was just raised on creativity, hands down. So whatever we were doing yesterday, as good as it was, the future is going to be far more creative. And I think, again, back to not creative in an arts and crafts way. This is going to be creative in a way that drives business growth, and we have to level up our game. So that was my message, loud and clear, and I think that's exciting to me for B2B marketers. I think how we talk has to. I think as B2B marketers, we've often almost disjointed a human that's making a decision in a buying group, at work in a buying decision, from the human that goes home and is with their family and enjoys TV and enjoys, whatever it is they might do. So I think we have to do a better job as B2B marketers in understanding our consumer in their entirety and recognizing that while there's differences and nuances with them as a B2B buyer, they're still humans. And so let's relate to them as the humans that they are in a really relevant and meaningful way.
Yeah, and the R word that you discussed, relevance, is a really tricky conversation I think we see with a lot of companies we speak with, because there's this assumption of what corporations and brands want their brand to be versus a deep understanding of what humans care about. And so I think now more than ever, we're seeing this, and discussed earlier in some of the conversations, is this idea of relevance versus reach. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges you'll have to overcome as you think about brand voice, content, going IPO, external optics of what the brand wants it to be seen as, versus kind of the pivot towards thinking about, hey, the contemporary consumer is more human and more relevant oriented than ever before?
Yeah. And the way I see it, and what we need to do better at SaaS is recognizing that that buyer, that customer, that prospect, when do they need logical information and when do they need an emotional connection? And we've nailed the logical. Like all of us in B2B, we've done our white papers, long form white papers. We've done all of that type of content that appeals to the logical aspect of the buying decision. We have to get to the other side of the coin and really look at the emotional side. And that's where I think you can become relevant in a way that connects with your buyer, your prospect, in a way that you can't when you start talking speeds and feeds. So for us, we leaned in heavily on this notion of creativity or on curiosity. Yeah. We believe curiosity is the heart of human progress. And so that's going to inspire innovation. And so our campaign has leaned into curiosity so that we could connect in that more emotional way. And then we'll begin to talk about, all right, once you know who we are and we can connect with you in an emotional way, then we can talk about capability and promise, but don't do that first.
Yeah. So build trust.
Build trust.
Yeah. One more question, because I think we're coming up on the finish line here. Your outlook for the space in 2023, kind of what disruption do you think set to come our way in the B2B space? What are you most hopeful for?
Yeah. I think the disruption, you can't talk about disruption that we see coming without talking about an economic downturn. I mean, that's all that we're hearing right now, and how that might affect us as society, as business, as an economy, as individuals. I think about it from a marketing perspective. If you haven't been doing some of the things we've talked about in the past, if you haven't been doing, being useful and being authentic and relevant to your consumer, you're not going to be top of mind to them if we do go into a situation like that. If you haven't been demonstrating the impact, the commercial value of marketing to your C-suite, you're going to see your budgets get cut, right? So I think we need to be really mindful of what happens and take lessons from the past, what happens in an economic downturn, and how can you best reach out to your customers? How can you make sure you've got the resources to do that because you've been demonstrating the value of marketing? That's a little negative if I think about what I'm hopeful for. So if you do with disruption, and we've seen this very recently, it does tend to unite us in a way that brings us together to focus on what's really important. And I hope, as we look forward, we're going to see a world that's much more equitable and sustainable and prosperous.
Well, Jen, thanks again for inspiring us for 10 minutes. I can't wait to continue the conversations with you and all that you're going to do with the SaaS brand and the upcoming IPO. And best of luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks to you both. All right, Peter, last but certainly not least, we have Emily Ha, who is the Corporate VP of Business Applications at Microsoft. She is responsible for the global go-to-market strategy and driving business growth for Microsoft Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. Prior to joining Microsoft, Emily was with Oracle, and she also served as CMO for 2 high-growth SaaS businesses. We're so excited to have you. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Emily. Thanks for taking time out of your day and investing it with us and all those tuning in.
Of course, it's a pleasure.
Maybe we can start with, you've been a very seasoned CMO in the B2B space, and Microsoft is obviously a household name in every capacity, in every way. What's something you learned about Microsoft in kind of your first year and a half there or so that you didn't know about the business that others might not as well?
That's a fantastic question. And by the way, you've had just awesome guests. I've been so inspired by all the conversations you've had. And SaaS happened to be our partner of the year. So I'm so glad you had.
Wow, I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a great transition to Microsoft. But in terms of what I learned at Microsoft, I'm relatively new. So I've been here almost a year. And one of the reasons I came to Microsoft is, like you said, it's a brand, it's a household name. It has an awesome brand. And I know the company is very invested in building brand love and cultivating the sense of community. And that has been true since I joined the company. The other reason I joined the company is the cultural transformation that Satya has led. And I'm a big believer in culture, which is not something that every company focuses on. And Microsoft, they just really put the cultural aspect at the front and center. And I would venture to say that culture has driven the business growth in Microsoft and has really led the way. So that's something that has been true as well since I joined the company. The one thing that I did not realize is Microsoft puts a lot of emphasis on their business model and how we financially and operationally deliver the customer experience. So customer experience for them is not a word we talk about in marketing, but it's deeply embedded in how we organize our business model, how we organize ourselves financially and operationally. So that's been really refreshing to see.
Yeah, let's keep going on that, because Microsoft has consistently been one of the most innovative and most adaptive companies that's out there, and your process to stay relevant has always been at the core of delighting your customers, and that seemingly is the consistent narrative. How do you all do that? How do you maintain that relationship and trust and innovation, keeping customer at the core?
Yeah, it really stems from one of our core values, which is the growth mindset. And our CEO Satya always says, it's important to have a growth mindset versus fixed mindset. He calls it be a learn it all versus a know it all. And inside the company, we define growth mindset as a desire to learn and therefore a tendency to embrace challenges, persist in the face of setback, see failure as essential to mastery, and learn from criticism and find lessons and inspiration in the success of others. And in marketing, we take this to heart. We are the guardian of our business model, and we practice our growth mindset in order to understand our customers' needs, how they're evolving, and how we can deliver our operational processes to delight our customers. And we practice something called business model bravery, which is a term I love. And business model bravery it represents continuous innovation and optimization of the entire business operations experience. And there are three key components. One is financially, so the way we capture value, in other words, the way we make money. The second one is operationally, so how do we deliver value from an operational perspective? And the third thing is organizationally, how do we align our teams to deliver the kind of impact we want for the customers? And when we practice business model bravery, we can adapt faster, we can align our teams faster, and we can accelerate our business transformation faster.
I mean, that sounds, first of all, I love that it's called business model bravery, because it takes a lot of courage to drive change and listen to customers' feedback and evolve, especially when you're a juggernaut as big as you are. It's a fascinating concept. How does that apply? Do you see applying, and how is it relevant to B2B marketing today?
For B2B marketing, at the end of the day, it's about how we deliver value to our customers. And when we look at business model, it's really about watching how customers are consuming our products and how they derive value, and organize the operational and the customer experience accordingly. So a few examples, when the company pivoted towards the cloud, we watch how customers consume differently in their cloud experience. So for Azure, we introduced a consumption-based model, and we allow customers to pay as you go. And this is a dramatic change from the user-based pricing model. And then in the gaming space, for example, we have Game Pass for Xbox, and that's a subscription-based model as well. In some cases, we declared new TAM. So for example, during the pandemic, we noticed a lot of customers are spending a lot more time in Microsoft Teams having conversations with customers or each other, and they're spending a lot more time in their productivity tools like Office. So what the customers were asking for is, we are kind of overwhelmed by the information and tools we're using. Can you give us a curated employee experience? So we introduced Microsoft Viva, which is a tool that is an employee experience platform that brings together communication, knowledge, learning resources, and insights in the flow of work. And by doing so, we declared new TAM by introducing a new suite of applications. And now we're evolving Microsoft Viva to tailor to role-specific employee experience. For example, recently we just introduced Viva Sales as something that tailors to the sellers. And another example is we kind of watch how customers consume our product portfolio. At Microsoft, the great thing is we have a very large product footprint. So we have business applications, we have personal computing, and we also have cloud infrastructure. And by watching how customers are consuming value, we can package these applications differently to tailor to their needs. And this is why we introduced industry clouds, for example, that offer a industry-specific experience.
Yeah, the technology is certainly behind almost all of the change that's happening in the industry. How do you see the technology playing a role with this kind of business model bravery to help, permeate and push a lot of the change that's happening in your organization, especially in an organization that's as big as it is?
Yeah, I mean, technology is Microsoft business, but it's also a vehicle for us to deliver the customer experience. So technology impacts business model bravery because the essence of our products is technology. And for us is really about, sometimes we have to deviate from taking a technology-centric point of view, but more a customer-centric point of view, and use technology as a vehicle to deliver customer value. But additionally, the way we engage customers is no longer just in person. We engage customers through the digital experience. So we have to think through the customer journey from a digital point of view. And we always aspire to streamline, simplify the customer experience in order to delight customers and deliver more value.
Amazing. And just to close us out, Emily, as you think about next year and some of the changes that have happened in the space, what are you most looking forward to in 2023 as we think about B2B and building brands and businesses?
Yeah, in this sense, I really concur. I love what Jennifer said in her response. I think when I look back in the last couple of years, the pandemic has been a uniting force, although it's been a negative experience. But I think as a humanity, we kind of came together and we found a lot of common ground. Now, as we head into next year, there's this sense of maybe the recession is happening. How can we use technology to allow customers to do more with less? And that's the central theme we're hearing from our customers. And my hope is with technology, we can use technology as a unifying force for humanity and bring us together. And I also hope customers can use technology to do more with less and weather through the storm.
Amazing. Thank you again for joining us today, Emily. Really enjoyed the conversation and very fortunate for listeners. They're able to sit through it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you, Peter. That was fantastic.
Thank you, Andrea.
Woohoo! So, and thank you to Kurvang, who says that the lineup was pretty good. He said lineup was pretty good. We tend to agree on this one as well. More on B2B. Thanks everybody for joining us. Please come back September 29th. We're going to have an episode that's all about TV 3.0. We're going to bring together top marketers to discuss what TV 3.0 looks like. Especially with the rise of cord cutters and cord nevers. We'll discuss the evolution of TV and how you can strike up a plan that positions you for what's next. Please continue to keep the conversation going. #marketing or marketing for the now. And also register for our upcoming show at MFTN. That's right, MFTN for Marketing for the Now, VaynerX.com. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining.